Jared, a lot of times we have people come to us and they say, I think I want to hire an associate. And that could be their first associate. It could be their seventh associate, just depending on the size and the type of practice we're dealing with. But let's kind of focus in on the person who maybe is going to hire their first associate. And, I think we will do a video at some point kind of going through some metrics that we've kind of uncovered and tell you it may be time to hire an associate. But let's talk through more like the psychology and really what do you have to be prepared for? What's your mindset need to be to know that you're ready to hire an associate?
We get this question all the time. And I think it's just there's a lot of associates out there. Right? They're kind of hard to find, but there are a lot of associates out there. And a lot of people, let's just talk single doc practices right now, I guess. And they think, well, hey, I'm going to go. They don't think about, like, does it make sense now? They're just like, I'm going to go get an associate. I'm going to plop them in here, and we're going to grow this thing, and the world's going to be perfect. But really from that single doc, perspective, they need to be basically sure of two things, right? They need to be basically at capacity. I'd say three things. They need to be at capacity, right? They need to be full, right? It's not hard to fill the schedule. Let's put it that way. They need to be full. They need to be busy. They're probably usually a little tired because they're so busy, right? So number one, they need to be full. Second of all, they want to have to grow. Or, this is kind of my third, or cut back hours, right? Because you can't just, this is what I see a lot of times. Single doc is pretty busy. A lot of times they hire early. They're just not full. They're a little, they're busy, but the data is really, they can actually do more, right? So they're not extremely busy, but then they go hire that associate and they plop them in and they get them working, but then they're taking dentistry away from them.
Right.
And I hate to say it this way, but they're pissed.
The associate.
Well, no, that's single doc.
Oh, I see, that the associate's taking away from the doc, yes.
Yeah, because there's only so much dentistry to go around, right?
Right.
But if you're not poised, I guess I should say this, that single doc is usually not prepared to grow. You're going to have to put more money into marketing. You're going to have to increase new patients to get more flow of patients to fill up. You got two docs, right? So those are the key things. I'm going to go back and say the three again, I think. You have to be full. Right? Your schedule has to be full, right? Number 2 and 3, you have to be, you basically have to be ready to grow or cut back hours. It's fine, from my opinion, to get an associate if you want to cut back hours. That's fine. Maybe you've just been so busy for so long, you're like, hey, what I'm going to do, instead of work 4 days a week, I'm going to cut this thing back to 2. I'm going to bring that associate. I'm still going to increase marketing, increase new patients. So I got to bring in patients, but not as much, because now you're not filling 2 whole dentist schedule. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I think it makes a ton of sense. And I think what I gathered from there and what you were saying is, if you're going to bring in an associate, you got to feed them. You can't bring them in and say, hey, I'm going to keep doing what I'm going to do. I mean, there is a inherent level of sacrifice that's probably going to happen. And you're going to have to tee some things up for them so they can have some success early, or you're going to have a very frustrated. That's why I was confused with what you're saying, because I've seen the other side too, where associates come in, they weren't ready to hire an associate, and there wasn't enough work there. And they're like, well, what am I doing? And that's a good way to lose an associate pretty quickly if they're not being fed.
You're exactly right. And it's, I talk to some docs sometimes that are like, hey, I'm going to hire them, and it's up to them. It's up to them to figure out where the new patients come from. I'm not going to spend any more money on marketing. Eat what you kill, right? I'm going to go. It's their job. They're not doing it. It's their issue. Maybe that's an old school mindset. I don't know, but I disagree with that. I think as a dental practice owner, and you're going to bring that associate in, you got to think about all the upsides of bringing an associate in, which we can talk about in a minute. But you, as the practice owner, need to be able to invest and help them along the way. You need to be a mentor to them. You need to basically, you need to help them. I talked to a doc the other day that just brought an associate on, and they were busting their tail, the single doc owner, a month or 2 months before to really tee up production to when that new doc came in. There was stuff lined up for them on day one.
So they could win.
Oh,
quickly.
You know, it's basically going out and using the eat what you kill, right? It's like, hey, I'm going to put you in the best field with the best deer or whatever you're hunting, if you will, and saying, that's what there are, man. Go get them.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, whoever it is. So you gotta invest in that associate and help them along the way.
I think that's one of the key things I've learned as we've kind of grown and start to working with some great group practices and folks who have a lot of associates and have kind of learned a lot about the proper way to onboard and keep good associates. And a constant theme I'm hearing is that you bring someone on, you have to pour into them, not just financially, but also, feed them intellectually. Yeah. And from a clinical skills perspective, I think you said they need a mentor. A lot of times, we have clients that maybe are near a university or something. So I've actually got some that they would rather have a new grad come in than, someone who's seasoned and had several years, because they are competent enough that they can train them in the proper way of how they do things, right. Mentor them, coach them up, give them opportunities. And they always have a reasonable ramp-up period. They try to feed them, but they also don't have unrealistic expectations that they're going to come in and blow it up right off the bat, especially if they're a brand-new grad. You have to have reasonable ramp-up expectations for these associates, too, or they're going to be frustrated, too, if they're not hitting their production targets and they're just not clinically there yet. So it's really, there's a lot more that goes into it than you would think. It's not just as simple as saying, hey, I feel kind of busy, so I'm going to go hire an associate.
Yeah, you almost need to be, here's a dorky accountant to me, you almost need to come in that thing with like a written plan, if that makes sense. Literally on like a piece of paper. It's like, I'm going to be doing these things, and telling that associate as you're interviewing them. Like, hey, if you jump on here, start working here, these are the things we're going to be doing. Yeah. And we're going to meet how often, right? Yep. And that mentor relationship, we're going to allow you to oversee certain cases that I'm doing to improve your clinical dentistry and all that sort of thing. And this is the CE we're going to send you to and all that sort of thing. And have a plan in place about how you're going to basically set that associate up for success, right? And having that plan, if you will, kind of going all over the place here, but during like that interview process, that associate's going to be like, man, like this guy or gal, this dental practice owner has thought this through, right? Yeah. Like they're not just hiring an associate, like they're investing in me, and they're going to allow me to, they're going to do everything possible to allow me to win in this position once I jump on, if that makes sense. So. It
makes a ton of sense. And I think everything we see in our profession, the dental profession, I mean, it is, for lack of a better phrase, a war for talent. And there are a lot of associates out there. We understand that. But, you should strive to get great ones with great mindsets that, have the right mindset, that fit into the culture that you've established, that can come in, do well, and not just do well, but do well for a long period of time. Yeah. I think what's damaging is kind of the bouncing in and out of associates. We see it with hygiene. Anytime you're churning that kind of talent, you're just having to reinvent the wheel. You're having to take all this investment you put into people. So it's super important for people to understand that you do pour into these people, but you understand that as a investment, and done well, that could be a long-term investment, and it could even be someone who could be a business partner with you somewhere down the road. 100%.
And it's, it's not for everybody. I guess I'll say it that way, right? Adding an associate is not for everybody. When we're talking to keep using single doc practices here, if we're talking to single doc practices and we're looking at their metrics and their hitting capacity, we could talk maybe on future episodes on those metrics you referenced, like we can look at. But that's a topic we often bring up, is like, you're at capacity here for what you're doing, right? Yeah. Maybe not from an ops standpoint, but just how much dentistry they are producing as one doc. And it's like, hey, have you ever thought about hiring an associate? Right. And a lot of times it's a real quick, no, it's not for me. Yeah. I don't want to mess with that. Or tried it before and it failed, right? So it's not a one size fits all, right? But talk about, if it is for you, what's the upside? Yeah. Right? Like, why? I'll ask you that question, Bill. Maybe like, as a single doc practice at capacity, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but let's say your schedule's full, you want to grow, let's just say it that way. Okay. Right? Why hire that associate? Like, what makes sense to do that for?
That's a great question. And I think the key phrase you put out there is they want to grow.
Yeah.
If they were good financially and, they just wanted more free time or family or whatever, fantastic.
Yep.
Because, this is the potential to free up time. And that's why you first off have to look, are you willing to probably step back potentially compensation-wise to feed an associate and hire him? But let's say that you are willing to do that and you want to grow. Well, what better way to grow than to step away from the chair and focus on making the business better?
Right.
That's it. Yep. I mean, the great practices we work with who have gone from 1 practice to 2, 3 to 5 to 8 to 10,
right,
whatever, at some point, the doctor, and most of them we work with are doctor-driven.
Yep.
There are some that are corporate, but, let's look at a doctor-driven group practice. At one point, they had to make the decision, I'm going to step away from the chair and get great associates who do the work so I can focus on growing a dental portfolio. Mm-hmm. And that is what I say the value is every hour that you can spend making the business better, making it hum, creating great operational systems, that's going to have a tenfold effect that will have so much ROI than, the compensation you could have produced working on teeth. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Done well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's almost, it matters what you want, right? What you're trying to do. But
right.
One thing we haven't talked about a little bit is, like, I'll use the words buying back your time, that hiring that associate to allow you to cut back, to focus more on the business, to maybe grow. You can cut back your hours and still grow. It's possible, right? Yeah. I say cut back your hours clinically, if you will, and focus your other time elsewhere to work on the business, like you said. But,
right.
Talk about, like, if growing the equity in your practice too, right? Just think about adding an associate, single doc practice, maybe doing $1.5 million, $1.8 million, whatever, from a collection standpoint, and adding that associate and taking that $1.5 million to 2.5.
Yeah.
You still own that practice,
right?
You've grown that practice, right? So the equity in that practice has exponentially grown, and you've got a more valuable resource there, or more valuable asset, I should say.
100%. And I think has to be the framework as you enter into an associate contract, is if it's not going to ultimately give you more freedom in the form of time, money, or both, then it's probably not the right move for you, unless you're just very gracious and willing to make less money so you don't have to work as much or whatever. I mean, so it has to pay off. And I think that's one beautiful thing, is that you've kind of worked through some modeling with others about, done well, it adds cash currently. Yep. It creates profit currently, which increases EBITDA, which increases your enterprise value. We all know you kind of got your fixed cost and you cover those, and you got your variable cost of your associate comp. And if they're producing well, I mean, that's just a good chunk of that should fall to the bottom line. The modeling should prove that out.
It should, 100%. A lot of people reference, hey, by adding an associate, I probably disagree with this a little bit, but by adding an associate, it's almost like passive income. I kind of disagree with that a little bit, because you guys listen to this video right now are like, yeah, right, that's passive. I mean, you realize how much work it takes to get an associate onboarded, ramped up, full, and actually maximizing the clinical side of them. I get it. That's hard work and takes a lot of time, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I disagree with the passive side of it. But once it's up and humming, I mean, we see it with a lot of our clients.
Yeah.
Once that associate is up and humming and doing a great job and actually helping grow the practice as well, then it really is some sort of passive income, right? Because you're profiting. That associate's getting paid well. Maybe that's another episode that we do, or video we do, on compensation of associates. But that associate's going to get paid well, and you as the dental practice owner, you're going to get a piece of that too, if you will, almost as residual income off of what they're producing and the overhead that's associated with it. So usually works out. I'm not going to say you're going to hit a dud or 2 or 3 maybe on finding that associate, but once you get there, it works out for sure.
And that comes down to setting expectations and maintaining accountability. That's why I would agree with you. It's not necessarily a passive income stream, but with the right associates, it can be somewhat close, because the right associate's going to kind of have that self-employed mentality, and they're going to look at themselves as a lot of times, like let me back up and say, like, let's say you have multiple practices and you have one practice that has one doc and it's an associate, but they still kind of feel that ownership. If your culture is good, they still kind of feel the ownership of that office and want to succeed and want to do well. And, those do kind of create the ability to have passive income type streams for that portfolio. But then you're always measuring and monitoring and making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And, there's certain metrics you can track on an associate to know kind of how much they should be producing per day. And if it gets off track, then the passive maybe falls to the wayside and you have to be a little bit more active in managing, coaching, getting them training, giving them opportunities. Maybe the new patients aren't there. Maybe we need to focus on that. Again, there's just so many things that you have to do to make it successful. But with the right person and with the right processes in place and the right team, associate can be a fantastic move for someone.
Oh, 100%. So what I usually encourage, and maybe we can end on this a little bit, but what I usually encourage doctors to do if they're thinking about adding associate, right, is literally just draw like a line down the middle of the page, right? And on the left side of the line, think through and then write down literally why you want to hire an associate, right? We talked about a bunch of different things, right? Maybe you want to grow, increase the equity in your practice, make more money. Making more money is fine, guys. Make more money. Maybe it's I want to cut back my hours, or maybe it's I want to add an associate because then I'm going to have them buy me out. Yeah, right. It's a succession plan deal, right? So on the left, literally just write the why and then say, okay, this is why I want to hire an associate, right? Now you're setting up your expectations of what has to be true in order for you to be happy. Right. So write those down, right? On the right side of the paper, on the right side of the line, write down a couple things. And maybe you can answer 3 questions to a degree, right? Are you full? Is your schedule currently full? Or like you look at your schedule and you can squeeze a new patient in here. I mean, you can always squeeze a new patient in, but you look at your calendar for the week and it's like, we got a lot of gaps here, right? Maybe your new patient flow, and we'll go into metrics later, is still only 25 a month. Not that that's bad, but maybe not enough to ramp up, right? So number 1, are you full, yay or nay? Yes or no? Number 2, basically, do you want to grow? Or do you want to cut back your hours? Okay. I would argue, and you argue with me here if you disagree, I would argue if you're not full, hang tight. Don't grow more yourself. You may be premature in hiring that associate. All right. Number 2, if you don't want to grow, I would say don't hire an associate either. Yeah. Right? Because someone would argue, well, okay, maybe he or she doesn't want to grow, but they're willing to cut back the hours. I still think you've got to grow a little bit, even though you want to cut it back. Because you're not going to cut it back to 100%, right? Or 0%. There's going to be some friction points there at some point if you don't. Exactly. And so then grow or cut back hours. And then just jot that down. And I would add a 4th one. If I keep talking, I might have 10 points. I would add a 4th one. And this might be going into the metrics, but if you're not willing to take a little bit, depends on how much, a little bit of a pay cut for a period of, I'm going to say 6 months. I'm not talking about a 50% pay cut, but a little bit of a pay cut, you're probably not ready to hire an associate. Yeah. Now, some out there are like, dude, you can do this without taking a pay cut. I get it. But the likelihood of that happening is higher than it not happening, in my opinion, and experience, right? So if you can't take a pay cut for a little bit, I don't know if you're ready to hire an associate. If you're not financially covered. Correct. And okay. That's going to be, there again, it's all about the friction points. Are we going to create friction points? Because it's going to limit the opportunities for the associate to be successful. Yep. Because that should be everybody's goal. We want this associate to be successful. Yeah. And if they are, everybody wins in that situation. Yeah. Jared, that's great stuff, man. Yeah. I think next time maybe we come back and actually do what we love doing, which is talking about numbers. How about that? Yeah, let's do it. I mean, I think it's just great theory. You know, if you guys out there listening to this, ping us. If you guys are like, well, you didn't think about that, like the why or anything, hit us up, right? I mean, that's what we want to talk through is we love talking to dental practice owners about growing their practice. Yep. That's what we love to do. At Duckett Lad, we love to help dentists grow.
And a real quick plug for our good friends at Dentist Job Connect too. We have had a lot of clients who have used them
For sure.
and had good success. And so sometimes it's hard to find. Sometimes they're, you're maybe have them in your backyard through a college or whatever, but that's a good resource that people could consider that we can say we've seen work really well.
Yeah, 100%. We got a great client, Dentist Job Connect, found their associate. Right now, I think he's probably 6 months out. He's loving life.
Yeah.
But guess what he had? A plan.
Yeah.
Right?
And
He knows
clicked
what
all
the
those
experts
boxes.
is. Exactly. And he clicked off all those boxes. So, Bill, we could talk all day, man.
I
I
know.
appreciate
Good stuff,
this.
buddy.
And we'll get another video on the metrics. All right, see you.
Thanks.